And one. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I usually have a question, but now I have a statement that might be a question. We'll see how it comes out, but it has to do with scaling. And I thought of this was an interesting perspective. And so I got the expert on to answer this for us. And the question is, what are you trying to scale in your business? And could it be the wrong thing? And I'm like, that what? So I'm like, I got to get this guy on. So I'm honored to be hanging out with Bradley Rausch. How are you today, my friend?
I am doing well, Dave. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited.
Absolutely. So you are a founder of a company called Level Up Influence. So fill us in on what is Level Up Influence.
Many iterations over the years, for sure. Typical entrepreneur story. I dropped out of college at 19, went into working for other companies, other organizations, et cetera, as kind of more consultant based. I started out actually as a closer. Worked for one of the largest closing sales coaching companies as a closer, so very high pressure. Left
Okay,
that when I saw how, quite frankly, horrible the clients were being treated, and from
sure.
there started my own thing. And so, Level Up Influence has again many iterations over the years. But what I'm doing now is coming off of the back of actually being director of client success for a eight-figure B2B consulting company. I now work with coaching, consulting, and SaaS companies to help make each client between 20 to 30% more profitable without more
Okay.
ad spend, more marketing, more front end work, things like that. And to your question or thought about scaling, the thing I'll, like you said, to pose to people is a lot of people will focus on scaling the front end and building the door to the house. I actually just made a LinkedIn post this morning. We've spent the last decade building the door to the house in terms of the sales, but we've
Sure.
completely fixed building any sort of similar frameworks or placing any sort of importance on the delivery and how the rest of the house is built. So
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, and you mentioned two words, client success. And it feels like it just is, it feels like it should be automatic, right? Where client success just automatically happens. But I think we're all consumers, so we know that sometimes the sales made and that's like the highlight, and then it kind of goes downhill from there. So when you think of client success, Bradley, or when you mention that, what is that? I mean, I'm assuming, like you said, it's from the start all the way to the finish of the sale and then post sale as well. Is that all kind of encompassing in that client success for you?
So I break up client success into four specific kind of key moments throughout the customer journey, and I've kind of reworked them to name them into four sales. So the framework is called Four Sales Framework, and it's based on this idea that again everybody focuses a lot of time on the first sale, which is the moment of payment, but there are actually several other key moments throughout the journey that will make or break your top line, your bottom line, if people renew, ascend, etc. So the first sale is payment. Second sale is going to be onboarding. Third sale is what I call advocacy. So this can either go testimonial, referrals, or both. And the fourth
Okay.
sale is ascension. And that's where they either move into a higher tier package, continue, or downgrade. And so approaching each of those three with the same intention, framework, strategy that we approach, the first sale is really what I focus on.
That's awesome. So I had payment, onboarding, advocacy, and what was the fourth one, Bradley?
Ascension.
Ascension. Awesome. And it feels like, again, as consumers, once we give money, it feels like that goes down, and actually it should hopefully go up, and continue to go up throughout that journey. So at Level Up Influence, are you working with sales organizations, service organizations? Are you working with a variety of different companies to kind of help them with that whole journey from start to finish? Is that where you guys come and help us out?
Yeah, it's a mix of B2B and B2C. Most of my
Okay.
background has been in B2B. Actually, one of
Okay.
my biggest clients that my largest success story working with a client thus far has been I took a B2B company that worked with, it was B2B coaching offer that helped functional medicine practitioners, so ex doctors, ex nurses,
Okay.
who wanted to start their own cash only companies.
Hmm.
Helped take that company from they were doing about 650K, took them to about a 1.2 million run rate in just under 6 months through
Wow.
entirely through client success enhancements. This was about 3 years ago, so the kind of the IP and the framework as I just laid out wasn't as detailed, wasn't as fleshed
Sure.
out. But it
Yeah.
was just kind of a bespoke consulting situation. And so, but really, really honored, really privileged to help them kind of facilitate that. And so again, the coaching, consulting, and SaaS are the three lanes that this kind of IP, this framework is really designed for. But to be honest, there's so much that I catch myself, in podcasts or conversations with clients that it's just like it's applicable to everywhere. I was on a podcast the other day where the content or the woman I was interviewing with mentioned, she's like, well, actually, so many of our listeners are actually e-commerce, which is interesting, and just
Sure.
ended up in that demographic. And so we literally transformed the entire conversation into the best for sales framework practices for e-commerce businesses. And it's just like, okay, this is applicable here too. So as you
Sure.
said, it's interesting how, and we can of course get into kind of why the industry is how it is, and best practices to reverse it. But it's very interesting how you're right. The perception isn't to focus on this, or the perception isn't to optimize after the moment of payment. It's always to optimize for the moment before.
And I'm just curious. I mean, I've been in sales my whole life and started companies and sold them and things like that. Sales was always part of obviously every company. It's a pretty big jump to go from 650 to 1.2. That's a big jump to double your sales in a small amount of time. Is that, I mean, some structures can't handle that. I mean, I'm assuming that you have to kind of have that structure. It's kind of like, opening up a huge mall on a two-lane highway and realizing, uh-oh, we don't have the, infrastructure for that. Is that one of the things that you guys look at as like, can my company even handle that kind of growth? Or do you just make the assumption that everybody can? Or how do you handle that piece on that one?
Great question. Definitely not every company can handle that kind of growth for sure. Uh, Not every company wants to be growing that fast, because with that,
Yeah,
when you grow at a multiple like that, and honestly, this is true for any, of course, this for any system, whether you're going from back end, front end, more marketing, more leads, whatever. You grow at any sort of a multiple, and everything breaks, and you have to build the new version of whatever will serve the
sure.
business at that time, at that revenue and profit level. So uh, definitely a lot of things were broken, needed to fix them, not only before I started working but with them, but during the process. The one thing that I'll say about, just speaking about that client in particular, and a lot of the other businesses that I'll work with, is I look for, untapped potential in the back end. And what I mean by that is a large amount of clients that are in an initial container, something, a front end offer, something in the low, somewhere between 1,000 up to maybe $20,000 worth of a coaching or consulting offer, something like that, or
Sure.
high ticket B2B SaaS. And a lot of people, a large volume in there, but a very low volume in terms of ascensions, next steps from there, or continuations from there, or people referring others to come into that initial container. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of kind of that potential of people, but they're not really going anywhere after they get into that initial into the initial container, I like to say. So it's companies that have their leads figured out, they have their marketing figured out, they have everything on the front end figured out. They Sales can crush, but it's bringing people in, and for whatever reason, it can be any number of countless reasons.
Yeah.
Then clients are not giving discretionary effort to increasing their own lifetime value and increasing their own profit margins for the company, right? A really good kind of comparison, or just question thought I like to pose is, after you factor in, of course, the cost to bring in a customer, whether that's marketing, leads, ad spend, whatever, you factor in the cost to sell them in, staffing, support. You factor in the cost to deliver the service, whether that's a platform or fulfillment, whatever, da da da. Before, of course, taxes, and before it meets the bottom line, hopefully your margin's sitting somewhere in the 30 to 50, maybe even higher percent range, right? What if there was a way through increasing LTV, and of course, I'm saying this, there is, but what if there was a way through increasing the lifetime value of the client through strategically making sure that you have a certain amount of testimonials, a certain amount of referrals that are
Sure.
closed without any customer acquisition cost from,
Yeah.
let's say, 10, 20, 30 clients, and that for every 10 clients, ideally 1 to 2 to maybe even as many as 4 to 5 are ascending into an even higher margin, higher ticket product, service, container, whatever. What if not only could every client that you bring in be worth 1x what you're charging instead of a 30 to 50% margin? What if it could be worth 1.1, 1.2? And that's
Yeah.
when, projections and math and business valuation becomes really, really interesting.
Sure. Well, and I think, as you pointed out, Bradley, I think a lot of us, we focus on that lead cost. What does it cost to get the phone to ring, or what does it cost for the payment in your world? We figure that, but we don't figure in the onboarding, the advocacy, and the ascension until it's like way at the end and we job cost to see if it was worth it. Is it hard to kind of track along the way? It feels like that would be intense to kind of have these benchmarks along the way. And I'm assuming that's what you do at Level Up, is really help that person that may not want to do it, may not know how to do it, may not see the importance of it, but that's kind of where you jump in and help them.
Correct. I would say it's half tactical and analytical. And honestly, it's also half a culture thing as well, I find a lot.
Okay.
The tactics and analytics side is, as you said, it's tracking. And of course, literally can do super simple stuff on a Google Sheets. We can also optimize, a Salesforce CRM, something or anything in between. So there's a lot of different pieces and factors that play there. Um, the culture thing is what I find has a lot more leverage, but also has a lot more potential risk. So when you think about it for your sales and your marketing and the team and the people and the attitudes that are usually on that side of the equation, it's much more of, I don't know if you do like anything with like DISC profile testing, things like
Yep.
that. I do a lot with DISC, and it's much more, of course, high D, sometimes high I, but usually very high D, very dominant type personalities, very large and in charge people, which that's usually the way it needs to be, and that's okay.
Sure.
Uh, on the back end, you're usually finding, ideally, I love to see people that are high I and high C. Those are
Yeah.
the two perfect personalities for back end, customer success. But what's also really interesting that people miss out on is whenever I will recruit client success members, whether that's a lead, a team member, support, whatever, I like to make sure that they have a little bit of D, a little bit of I in them, at least, because you need to know how to have uncomfortable conversations. You need to know how to pitch. You need to know how to present an ascension or
Yeah.
a next sell or ask for a testimonial, ask for a referral, right? And I practice and go through scripting with them. But the back to the culture thing, it's the attitudes and the types of personalities that are not only usually in the front end, but also, of course, running organizations at times will default to discretionary effort being put into and discretionary spend be put into the front end because it's sexy and because it's exciting and because you can
Yeah.
see it on a piece of paper right when the ad spend comes in and the client, the lead signs up for a call, whatever.
Sure.
It's a much more mature conversation. It's a much longer tail, delivery, right? It comes down, but I think again the most important lever or piece of leverage throughout the entire process is like I very strategically put in calls with the teams, not just calls with the CEOs, like they're welcome to come to these too, but calls with the
Sure.
team to help facilitate kind of the, not necessarily a change management or like a culture transformation or anything like that, but just to help kind of soften the blow of like, listen, guys, this is not going to be the prevailing attitude or the prevailing theory going forward anymore, because if it was and if it worked as well as you thought it did, or if it had as much sway as you thought it did, your margins wouldn't be where they are, your clients would be ascending, and
Yeah.
you would never have any client complaints, and that's not why I'm here. So
Sure. Yeah. No,
so it's
absolutely.
it's more of a kind of a look in the mirror type of thing.
Well, and I love thinking about, we do a ton of work with DISC to be able to tell where people are, where their strengths are, where things are that they can work on. And I'm guessing our research and our experience has shown a lot of D people, the dominant driver, the results oriented person that's in that payment stage. A lot of outside salespeople, straight commission sales, whatever you want to call them, those hunters, they're out there looking for results. And I mean, I think like when you have to carry that through, like for me, I'm a high D, high I. So like payment is fun.
Yep.
Onboarding is a little less fun, Well, by the time you get to advocacy and ascension, I'm like, can someone else please do this? Because I like to play with in my strength, and again, most people listening, they have a strength that they probably know pretty darn well. Is that part of what you do at Level Up? Is to try to help an entrepreneur with their strength and find within the team the strengths that they have? Because I gotta believe there's a certain personality that kind of fits in each one of those four pieces. Is that what you've seen as well?
Yes and no. So as far as the implementation of just kind of a higher standard of client delivery and what that looks like on a tactical level, like we're not sitting here like in a circle singing, around the fire singing kumbaya, being like, yes, we want our clients to win, let's do it, like
Yeah,
that like super woo woo. We're not doing that.
sure.
Very tactical in terms of, listen, this person coming in, they're expecting X and Y and Z. You're not delivering currently X and Y and Z. How can we make that happen? How can we meet and not only meet and strategically exceed their expectations at scale every single time without extra margin, without taking away extra margin, without making the entire team working 70, 80 hours a week, without more complexity in the business? And so one of my favorite things to say in terms of kind of an overarching branding of what I do is making growth feel less complex. It's
Okay.
just from, again, and kind of from the back end forward as well. And so the where the no part then comes in is to your comment about the, you're doing the payment, you're doing the onboarding. It's that initial moment where the client comes in and you're excited, and it's
Yeah.
the energy. And then by the time you get to the point where there's an ascension or an advocacy conversation, it's a different narrative, it's a different setup. And like, this is 100% completely validate that. But to get into like two very specific things of what I challenge people on is the timing of an advocacy, which is referral or testimonial or ascension ask. Usually people get completely wrong. Everybody waits until the end of a program, the end of a container. You work with somebody for
Sure.
6 months, they wait until week, whatever that is, 12 to 23. They wait until
Sure.
week 23 or 22 to ask or even to broach
Yeah.
the subject of doing anything like that. You want to
Yeah.
be asking or planting the seed for any one of those three things: referral, testimonial, or ascension, between 30 and 50% of the way through the container. And the reason for that is because they are most likely to give you discretionary effort, because that's essentially what you're asking them to do. You're asking them to
Right.
consider an offer that they never signed up for, the ascension offer, or you're asking
Yep.
them to take time out of their day to go out and market for you about why
Right.
you're so great. It's discretionary effort that they do not have to do. They are not obligated to give you. They will do that when their belief in you is highest. And that does
Sure.
not come at the end of a container just because you think the results are going to look the greatest at the end. It comes
Sure.
very strategically at key moments throughout the client journey. When you give them discretionary effort, they see it. They know that, hey, I'm here because of what this person does. I'm really excited about what's next. That's the moment to ask for something. And you have
Wow.
to know, as a client success rep or team or culture or
Yeah.
whatever, you have to know when those moments are. And so I break up those moments into soft asks and hard asks, which, and again, we can like get into the tactics and
Sure.
specific things, but they're very, very, just like how you have in sales. Again, this is what I was saying at the beginning. Every sale deserves the same focus and intention as the first one does. In the first sale, in that moment of payment, you have those things you're trained to know as a closer, again, like ex closer here, so I get it. You're
Yeah.
trained to know when, like, based on the nuance and the context and the tonality of what the prospect is saying, you're trained to pick up on those things and then to know what to say next. It is the exact same thing in these conversations about ascension and testimonials and referrals. And so the part where I would, the bow I'll put on this and where I would challenge you is,
Yeah.
instead of looking at it as this is a less exciting, or it's a less momentum driven, it's a less, it's a very it's a very separate conversation from the initial thing, which is getting them
Sure.
in, excitement and the start and
Yeah.
everything. Look
Yep.
at it as, I'm doing them a disservice by signing them up if I don't actually think I can get them to the point where they will be happy to refer, to give me a
Yeah.
testimonial, to ascend. And so the challenge I give, sales teams, because I do a lot of work with sales teams as well, not just the client success, to make sure we're not over
Sure.
promising. The question and the kind of the ethics thing that I pose to them is, why are you enrolling somebody, or have you ever enrolled somebody, sold to somebody who you didn't think could be a poster child for this program and what it does, front page of a testimonial. Oh
Sure.
well, extenuating circumstances and this and that, and oh they had a they weren't the best fit, but this and but that and da da da. And
Yeah.
I'm not here to tell anybody don't make your bag, don't sell, don't close. Absolutely
Sure.
not. I also am not here to say everybody has to be 100% fit because that's not practical either. But what I pose is it's not a moment. It's a not to be woo woo, but it's a journey, and there's a lot more that I think culturally can go into that alignment and discretion for a
Sure.
team than just can I get their card now?
Yeah.
Start thinking about can I get their card in 12 months from now for a
Sure.
larger, higher margin thing.
Sure. Well, and that's a great way to look at it. And I think it's interesting because I do work with remodeling contractors, and like if the in the middle of the project when the kitchen's torn up and there's no appliances and no running water and you're eating out of a microwave in the basement or whatever your setup is, it feels like that would be the wrong time to ask for that advocacy. But
Oh,
in
it's
reality, if you've done your job correctly, I think I always equate that advocacy with emotion. When the emotion is high in a positive way, when people are feeling really good about whatever they're embarking with you on, that to me seems like the best time to have them advocate for you. Are you in agreement with that?
100%.
Perfect. And that's where I think it's interesting because a lot of times a remodelers say, I'm like, have you talked to them about their neighbors or their friends or anyone coming through looking at your work? And they're like, no, we always wait, like you said, Bradley, they wait till the end and then, try to ask at that point, which again can be hard, especially if the project took longer, cost
Yes.
more, was
Yes.
bumpy along the way. That customer experience, if that's not super high, I think you have a much harder chance of getting a referral. I'm just curious if what your thoughts are on that.
No, 100%. You know, it's it's always really interesting when I get I'll talk with sales leaders sometimes, again, like very high D personality type people.
Sure.
I'll talk with sales leaders sometimes, and the undertone or sometimes the uncomfortable conversation that I will have to kind of call out and work my way through before we can really get to the nitty gritty of stuff, just again because kind of preventing us in the conversation is
Yeah.
the preconception that the purpose of client success is solely to make the client happier. And the thing that I always challenge on that is I not that I don't care if the client's happy, but I wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't statistically more likely to get you 2 to 3x top line, at least
Yeah.
2x bottom line from where you are on a per customer basis. So like forget what makes the customer happy, not happy, whatever. Let's just look at the math. Like let's just do that. And again, I get it's a longer tail thing, but it's like you spend 6 months building out a brand new marketing funnel, building out a brand new sales team versus you spend 6 months taking the customers that you have and finding ways to improve upon their experience and ascend them into something else and get them to refer their 5 best friends. I will
Yeah.
put $1 million right now that the latter will bring you 10x more revenue and more top line and more bottom line. So with all that
Sure.
being said, back to your question of
Yeah.
the best times to ask and kind of the again like the undertone of that of like the strategy behind it, as just as you said, if you're asking at the end, the client experience has to be basically perfect. It has to be what
Yeah.
exactly what they were promised. But the issue is that because people are human and sales is ego and all of these things, uh, there's oftentimes it's oftentimes not a match. And
Sure.
we get into why we can, I'm not here to blame anybody. I'm not here to
Sure.
and et cetera, names and all that. But it's not often a match. And so
Sure.
just looking at the math, looking at where they're most likely to give you a referral or a testimonial or ascend into something else, or if it's for a contractor, for example, where they're most likely to I don't know, say something like it's an upsell or you talk to them about, oh, hey, I'm going to want my bathroom redone next year. And you're like, hey, well, if you wanted to go ahead and take care of that now or take care of payment now, I'll give you 40% off or something, whatever.
Sure.
The place where they're most likely to give you a yes to any ask that you would present to them in any three of those categories, I will argue till the day I die is going to be at the moment where they have the most, as you said, the most emotion and the most
Yep.
belief behind what you're doing. And so,
Yeah.
it's like it's again, it's like people hear client success and they're like, oh, it's just I'm making a customer happy. And I'm like, sorry, excuse my French, F making a customer happy. Let's just make more money. And this
Yeah.
is, this is like, let's make more money in a less complex way at
Right.
scale. Like, that's really
Yeah.
what it comes down to. So that's there's my non woo woo.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I think that and we're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to kind of talk about that existing customer because it feels like there's a lot of money left right at that spot where you could sell more to an existing customer, sell more often, and then get into that referral piece. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. Honored to be hanging out with Bradley Rausch, founder of Level Up Influence. And we are talking about this sales journey and client success. And the question or the discussion is about trying to scale might be the wrong thing. And the premise here is that scaling a lot of times is at the front end where people do it. We're talking about once you get a client and how to scale there. And I don't know if you agree with this, but it feels like it's about the research shows it's about 7 or 8 times easier to sell something to an existing client rather than somebody that's brand new. So I wanted to kind of start there. Are you seeing that in your research and in your travels around the country in that, Bradley? Are you seeing that it's way easier to sell something to an existing client than to have to start all over again?
100%. Absolutely. I actually just made a LinkedIn post on this a couple of days ago, but everybody whenever somebody comes into working with you, I don't care if it's coaching, consulting, SaaS, home remodeling, dentist, like it could be literally anything. um, Everyone has been burned before. Everyone
Yeah,
has a very healthy, oftentimes very justified level of skepticism, especially in this online coaching, consulting, SaaS space.
sure.
So getting them to a point where they're willing to give you, this discretionary effort that we're talking about, but also a point where they're willing to sacrifice their own time, their own effort to believe in your systems and to give, to give it the time to get to the result that you're telling them it can get. It's a it's at times is a at the very least is a weighted ask, if not sometimes a very difficult task. And
Yeah.
so selling to a customer that already believes in you, that you've already gotten results for predictably, that you have given your discretionary effort to at scale is not only I think a much easier conversation, but it's a much more mutually beneficial conversation as well. Because that person is not just ascending; they're giving you probably a really great testimonial. They're referring you. The key
Yeah.
is you to prompt those conversations, but once you know how to do that properly, then I think the return on your existing clients can be really great.
Well, and I'm shocked at how many people I talk to around the country that they say sales are down, we're struggling. And my first question has always been, how are you tackling your existing clients?
Right.
How are you connecting with them, staying in front of them? And people look at me with this strange look like we don't do that. And it just shocks me because it just seems like even for a product or service, even to call somebody and say, "Hey, Joe, 6 months ago we did X. Just I want to see, is it performing like we said? Are you having problems? What can we do better? Just purely, it feels like this is all about the customer, which it is. On the back end, though, it's always a safe spot to be like, do you need more? I mean, I have this weird service with HP where they monitor my printer and they automatically send me my replacement ink, so I never have to worry about running out of ink. Right? It's a cool thing, super easy. But they're concerned about me running out of ink. And this big HP company, they're not a sponsor yet, they should be, but this big HP company is monitoring my little, printer. And I feel pretty darn special when I go to the or the mailbox and there's more ink. And I'm like, oh, I must be getting close or whatever. And I'm shocked at how few people are actually staying in contact with their existing customers. Are there some simple ways that you suggest for your clients to kind of stay in front of them, whether it's, any email, phone calls, anything? Is there anything special that you've seen work better than other things on that situation, Bradley?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. I could literally be here for the next 2 hours. Yes, 1,000%. There's so many things. I think that the simplest and also I think the best leverageable thing to share would actually be something we talked about a minute ago, which is actually in onboarding. I love what you mentioned about you're like, hey, you're like 6 months post working together or post payment. What was your experience? Or how, how did it go? Do you need anything
Yeah.
else, etc. Um, I want to rewind that back to during this onboarding. So think of the onboarding as I like to call it the 72-hour rule, which is
Okay.
that during the first 72 hours after payment, the client is most susceptible, most malleable to any sort of change in terms of how they view you, how they view the interaction, how they expect the rest of the interaction to go. They're the most malleable. They can be
Okay.
changed, they can be influenced at the most, right? And so during this time, I've broken this down into you really want to create four different clear states within your customer within the first 72 hours. And those states are going to be clarity, safety, momentum, and identity. And so to break each one of those down really just very tactically, specifically, actually, I'll start with safety. So safety is going from basically, did I make a mistake? Is this the right place for me to be? To if something goes wrong, I know who to contact. I know when to expect a response. Just that kind of certainty, right?
Sure.
Best way to do this, and this is what prompted this, is your call suggestion made me think of this. My favorite way to do this is literally pay someone $20 an hour to just sit there, or maybe within their existing tasks, whatever, and to give everybody who's signed up for any service, whether they paid $10, whether they paid 10 grand, whether they paid bought a house from you for $1 million,
Right.
call them within 12 hours after the moment of payment. And I promise that single thing will pay dividends. It builds so much emotional equity with them that you can then, quote, if needed, quote, cash in on when there are
Yeah.
bumps along the road in terms of client delivery. And so it's literally
Sure.
just a call within 12 hours from a human. They don't need to have any of the answers. It doesn't need to be the CEO himself. It can be anyone. And all it is just assuring that they know where to go. They have the first touch point scheduled. They know what the next steps are. They know how to get support. That's it. And it's so simple, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, duh. But I would I would 99.9% of people do not do that. So
Sure.
there's your first
Sure.
part to start. The
Yep.
clarity. My favorite thing to do here to create clarity is to create a custom, what I call a start here asset. Obviously, you can have AI really, really help you with this, where if it's a coaching or consulting thing, you take the transcript from a sales call, plug it into a custom AI that's built out to identify patterns, etc., to put together a very custom asset, giving them their own customized game plan of what's going to happen over the next days to weeks to months. You make a 10-minute Loom video. Again, doesn't need to be you, can pay somebody to do it. Make a 10-minute
Sure.
Loom video walking them through that customized roadmap. It feels so intentional. They feel so seen. They don't feel like a transaction.
Right.
Momentum is the third one. My favorite way to install momentum with somebody is to make sure that they have at least one open and closed loop task to complete within the first 2 to 3 days. So a lot of tasks that we'll give clients, especially for these higher level consulting things, it's very bespoke. It's very long term. It's very, well, let's start the process on this, or we can think about doing this. Give them at least one thing to do that is an open and a closed loop. They start and they finish it ideally within like a 30-minute time frame. Again, you can use AI for this, where you have a
Sure.
custom AI GPT set up. If it's, let's say, a fitness coaching offer, they plug in all the crap that's in their refrigerator, in their pantry, and it spits out right there a red, yellow, green list of everything that's good, okay, and great, or sorry, good,
Gotcha.
okay, and bad for them to be
Yeah.
eating, not eating. And then it also spits out a grocery list for them to take to the store next time they go. And it also gives them questions that they need to consider before the next time they chat with you or on your first call. And so
Yeah.
it's this started and stopped, open and closed loop task that gets them the momentum going. And the last part is identity, which is taking them from, I'm just a transaction, I'm just a number, to these are my people. This is where I belong. Favorite way to do this is to actually sync them up with someone who is at a very similar stage to they are. It makes them feel completely seen, makes them feel insanely resonant with what you're doing, the mission, etc. And you just say, hey, Sally, listen, Tammy's in the exact same spot as you are. She also is really worried about X and Y and Z. She also has a similar goal of X and Y and Z. I think you two are going to make a fantastic pairing. Would love to see you two help each other and win. That that community, even just with one other person,
Sure.
again, dividends it pays with emotional equity throughout the rest of the time working with them is insane. And so you want to achieve all four of those states within the first 72 hours.
Wow. Well, and the funny thing is in sales training, there's either the prospect system or there's the sales professional system.
Yep.
I love this piece where there's a system after the sale because so many companies, like you mentioned, just fall down here. And then it's just kind of, it is what it is. It almost feels like, the guy that went to the bathroom got assigned this because he went to the bathroom and he couldn't say no, and it's like low man on the totem pole or the worst guy or who cares, we don't pay much attention, let's go get the next sale. I think clarity, safety, momentum, and identity are fantastic things to do in that first 72 hours. Have you found, as we start to land the plane today on this, Bradley, have you found any like industries that this doesn't work? Because obviously, like probably, buying a taco at Taco Bell doesn't seem like this would fit into this. But I'm just curious if, on a larger scale, if you're seeing anything that really doesn't work here, or if there's reiterations that you have available for other options.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'm a big believer in take what you want and leave the rest. Not only in content business, but also there's a million and one people out there spouting personal development advice and all the things on social media. So
Sure.
I'm a big believer in having the self awareness to know what applies to you, what doesn't, and being able to walk away from the rest, knowing that you're still doing a good job at the end of the day. So as
Sure.
I said, that example the other day of the podcast I was on with the person who was most of our listeners did e-commerce, right?
Yeah.
The just to go back through for an example, each of these four pieces of the onboarding process, the safety definitely would need to rework that, because it's like if somebody's buying a $29 e-commerce thing at scale, you're not giving everybody a call within 12 hours. That's not happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like maybe it's a custom written, AI driven email. Maybe it's an outreach on a social media platform. There's a version of it, right? Same with clarity. The kind of morph I did for this that we talked through is, perhaps having a subset of content on your Instagram page that goes over best practices to how to best use the product that you just bought, or after using this for a month, here's what to expect. Things like that are really only applicable post purchase, that help the
Okay.
client more from the product you got.
Gotcha.
Momentum, again, you work through different ways of it. Also, maybe there's just things that you can't take from it. And
Yeah.
then identity, I think that's at scale, honestly, for any product service. That's the easiest one, to be honest, because there's
Sure.
so different communities, whether on social or platforms like School or Circle or Discord, whatever, that you can rally people who all believe in or want the same thing. And it doesn't matter if it's, I don't know, you're selling candles online, or you're a group of $1 million plus a year entrepreneurs. Like, there's a
Sure.
community of everything. So I think that identity piece, I would start there and then see kind of what other pieces you can reverse engineer. Um,
Gotcha.
and and again, it kind of falls the same thing throughout every part of the four sales framework. So
Sure. So, question for you here as we again come in for landing on this one. I'm curious, like for somebody listening right now that's never really thought of the first 72 hours after a sale, and we're unpacking this together. If they wanted to connect with you on that, would you help them with that piece, or are you always trying to, look at the whole entire sales process? I'm just curious if somebody needed you to help them just with this first 72-hour onboarding piece, are you able to just help them with the things that they need help with?
oh, absolutely. There's definitely a consideration, I would say, to be made for just a more holistic approach, making sure that you're not
Sure.
optimizing one thing, and for instance, your referrals are or crap, or you don't know how to ask for ascension or don't have an
Sure.
ascension offer, things like that. So
Yep.
short answer is yes, absolutely. If that would be the largest lever
Okay.
in the business, because it's also like, if it's something simple, if it's something straightforward, or if the client culture, let's say, is really great, perhaps onboarding isn't the lowest hanging fruit. Perhaps it's you're letting clients walk out the door without even offering them an ascension offer. You were saying earlier, you're like, so many people I talk to don't even consider their back end. The conversation
Yeah.
that I have most frequently along the same lines is, so many people I talk to don't even have, or don't even haven't even fathomed having some sort of a continuation offer. They're just like, I sold the thing, I gave the client the thing, and that was it. And I'm like, what do you
Yeah.
mean that was it? And then that goes
Right.
from there. So it's going to be different for every business for sure.
That's awesome. Hey, listen, two questions and I'm going to let you go here, Bradley. What would your tip of the day be today for somebody listening? Maybe it's something we covered, maybe it's something that we haven't touched on yet, but what would your tip of the day be today?
Great question. We've covered it a bit in different ways, but I'll just put this super clearly, is specifically for a founder, somebody who has the decision making power within a business. The challenge I always have for founders is to audit. It's just a really quick self audit exercise of auditing the last couple of weeks, maybe up to a month of your calendar. Look at all of the blank spots in your calendar, right? So I don't know, it's a Tuesday, you had from 10 to 11 free on that day, and you had your last meeting ended at 4. I don't know. Try and think back, or try and look at, or try and kind of go back through your meetings, emails from that day. Where did your discretionary effort go? Did your when you had that extra time, which I know is like, you're like, I don't even have any extra time. Okay,
Yeah,
where did
sure.
where did your where did your least prioritized time go? Where did it
Yeah,
go just automatically? Did it go to front end? Did it go to sales? Did it go to the higher ego things? And if so, that is totally okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, get your bag.
sure.
But the
Yep.
challenge I would have for you is, if at least a little bit of it didn't go to just any sort of question similar to, how can I make my client 10% happier? I
Yeah.
would challenge you to look at what the culture of the team is, and how you're kind of disseminating that to the rest of the people in your company.
Wow, that's great. I mean, so often when we have extra time, it's like, especially high D outside. I mean, I've been in outside sales my whole life, so I'm like, who can I call? It's kind of like an appointment canceled, right? So I have this little gap in my schedule. I'm like, who can I call?
Right.
And it's like I have my top 10 hit list or whatever. And it's crazy. I love that reminder. Thanks for sharing that, because so often we focus on the front end, like you said, where in the back end we really need to invest time. And it's proof. I mean, I wrote a number one Amazon best-selling book on how to improve your customer's experience. So it's funny knowing that that's where I came from, but yet I still I just naturally go to that, hey, who can I call, and who doesn't know me yet, or whatever that is. So great tip today. I appreciate that. So for somebody listening right now that we've inspired them to, they want to learn more about the payment, the onboarding, the advocacy, or the ascension. They might want to know more about clarity, safety, momentum, and identity. If somebody has a question for you, Bradley, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, best way to connect is LinkedIn. I post daily content there, videos, posts, podcasts, all that good stuff. I'll probably eventually have a couple of clips from our show on there. So definitely LinkedIn, and my website is just bradleyrausch.com.
And Rausch is Rausch.
Got it.
So bradleyrausch.com or LinkedIn. This is great. I hope that this helped some listeners today, some entrepreneurs with a blind spot around, the back end of this. And back end to us a lot of times is how the payment process or shipping or handling. This brought a whole new vision to that. So I appreciate that. And again, thanks for sharing that. I'm going to watch more of your stuff on LinkedIn and definitely continue to learn from you. So thank you so much for sharing this, and can't wait to hear more positive 650s to $1.2 million uh testimonials and power stories, because that definitely tells that you know what you're doing. So thank you for the time today, and thanks for all you're doing in our industry. We need more guys like you.
I appreciate all the kind words. Thank you, Dave. Thanks for having me on.